I think I'm pregnant.
Greetings, cyberspace. It's IRATE Prostate here. Got a new idea. I'm going to try it out, see how it works. And this is part of it. It's going to be called horror history. And we're not going to get too deep on this stuff. But what I'm going to do is, like I had said in previous videos about what I want to do when it comes to talking about horror, is I want to focus on what I consider to be important and good horror that scares the shit out of you, and makes you think, or just just scares the shit out of you. Right? Because that's what good horror is anyway, about learning about yourself. What I wanted to talk about today are a series of films that were made in the 60s, and the last one, it's a trilogy. It's called the Apartment Trilogy by writer director Roman Polanski. Two of them are based on a book, and I'm not sure about Repulsion. They take place in apartment buildings, dealing with this strange relationships that we have with our neighbors in apartment buildings, creepy old neighbors. Some of the things covered in the Apartment Trilogy include social isolation and emotional isolation, I would say. Feeling outnumbered, paranoia, internal terror, fear of going insane, slowly unraveling by yourself. All the main characters in these movies, two of them in particular, are by themselves complete. Rosemary from Rosemary's Baby, she's isolated in the fact that she feels like that there's something going on, and she doesn't know what it is, but she thinks that people are plotting against her in some kind of way. But I'm going to focus on one of the videos, or one of the movies from tonight. I will show. Here's an idea of Polanski's second movie. Was a movie called Repulsion. It came out in 1965. Catherine Deneuve is the main character. Her name is Carol Ledoux, and contrary to popular belief, she's not French. She's Belgian. So that's a little bit of trivia. We're talking about weird old neighbors, neighbors getting upset at the noise, things like that. Old people can kind of come off as being kind of creepy, or kind of weird. They some of them have an odor about them, which is, it's not nasty, and it's just weird. What I want to do with the Repulsion is I'm going to show you a video. It's just a nice collection of imagery to give you an idea of the feel of the movie. I'm not going to go into it. I'm not going to do a deep dive on it. I may do that later on. But I really wanted to focus on the third and final film, in the trilogy that came out in 1976. As an artist, Polanski has a really interesting style, and it's notably stylistic when you watch his stuff. Can't describe. It's an atmosphere. It's kind of like things just are just a little askew atmospherically. You can't, it's like you can't put your finger on it, but you sense this, like, something weird. It's just weird. Something weird's going on, and I've always liked that about this series. Of course, Rosemary's Baby was really a popular film. It was nominated for a bunch of awards, with Mia Farrow, John Cassavetes, and guy that played Dr. Zayas. But yeah, Rosemary's Baby is probably the most the most well known out of this group. Repulsion, oddly enough, is his second movie that he ever filmed, and Repulsion is still taught in film school today. Some of the techniques he used, real simple sound. You'll notice with horror, The soundtrack is very, very important and integral to creating a good horror film. And Polanski uses, it was interesting because I noticed that Herschel Gordon Lewis did the same thing, using kettle drums, boom, 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 and pretty much just percussion, with cymbals and things, and creating these loud, cacophonous, almost disheartening, noises. But so, the Tenant is probably my favorite out of the three, even though I love Rosemary's Baby and I love Repulsion. They're really all three fantastic movies. And what's so wonderful about them, they call it a trilogy, but each one stands firmly on its own merit. And, even if you don't watch the other two, you can take any one of these and sit down and watch it. And I don't know, I enjoy them every time I see them, and I see something different every time I watch it. And that's usually the sign of a good film to me. So I watched The Tenant again. Like I said, it was made in 1976. It stars, oddly enough, this is the only film out of the three where Polanski plays one of the roles in this film. Now, he's played roles in other films that he's directed, like Chinatown, and I can't remember. There's something else that's getting out of my brain. But this, he plays the main character in this, what I found was fascinating. But then again, when I looked at it, it was based on this book, The Tenant, by this guy named Roland Topol. And it's about a guy that's Polish, of Polish ancestry, who's living in France, which, is basically exactly Polanski's situation when he moved out of Poland into France. The Tenant focuses on a character. His name is Tchaikovsky. That's it. All right, and Tchaikovsky. The film opens up and we're in a hospital. Okay, and Tchaikovsky is staring at this person that's wrapped up. They look like a mummy. I mean, they're literally wrapped from head to toe in bandages. They're in traction. Looks like they've gotten several broken bones. And he learns that the person had just attempted suicide from jumping, from the second-story window out of an apartment building. And he is at a point where he needs to get an apartment, right?
Right.
So this morbid son of a gun, he decides to kind of snoop around and see if the apartment is going to be available. Should the lady's name is Simone Schul, should Miss Schul die, right?
Right.
Strange. Because it's kind of a bit morbid to begin with, I think, anyway.
Right.
But in that scene, he runs into Stella, who is a gorgeous woman played by Isabelle Adjani, one of the most beautiful French actresses that I've ever seen. She's but she's thin and lithe and more like feline, but she's so pretty, and she's an excellent. She's in like 3 or 4 significant horror films that came out about that time, and I may go into those later, but I'm not going to do it right now. So, they're there looking at Miss Schul. They literally bump into each other, not figuratively, but they bump heads when she drops some groceries, and they both bend over to pick them up. They bump their head, and they introduce themselves to each other and start talking. And she's real upset because she's really good friends with Simone, and they talk. He doesn't let her on that he's really there to see if he can get this apartment. So he's playing a little weird little game there, character. Miss Schul, Simone Schul is an Egyptologist, which is really kind of odd because she looks like a mummy at this point in the film. Wrapped up, and if you'll pay attention, you'll notice that she's got a tooth missing and she's all busted up, you know, from the attempted suicide. And Stella's very upset that Simone is really messed up, and you know, she's crying, and Tarkovsky, he decides to, you know, go on with her, and you know, they go and they get a drink, and he suggests they go to like a movie or something. They go and end up seeing like Bruce Lee or Return of the Dragon. It's the one where it's the one with Chuck Norris in it, but it's not. They're not looking at that part of the film. But it's. I thought it was interesting, you know, because there's some kind of bizarre stuff that Stella does to Tchaikovsky while, you know, they're in the theater. You know, she's, you know, begins groping him, and then he kind of like, you know, leans in and returns the favor. You know, they leave, they part for the day. It's like, well, goodbye, and he's like, oh, you don't want to take me. In his brain, I'm sure he's like wanting her to take him home because he's, you know, all hot and bothered. In the meantime, they learn that Shul dies, and of course he you know, he moves in the apartment. Concierge was played by Shelley Winters, and the guy that owns the building is this guy named Monsieur Z. And I can't remember the actor's name, and I apologize for that. And Monsieur Z tells him, you know, it's like they had a lot of trouble with Miss Shul. You know, she made a lot of noise upstairs, you know, and the people that lived under her complained a lot about her making a lot of noise. As a matter of fact, the whole floor complained about her noise that she made. And he said, well, I'll assure you, I'm gonna, I'll be as quiet as I can be, right?
Right.
And so, you know, he gets moved in. Some folks from work decide they just show up at his house and have a housewarming party. And they're raising hell, and it's loud. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. You know, even though it's a Saturday night, they're unnaturally loud. He's got one friend from work that's just a total jerk, man. He's got a big chin, and he's just like, you know, he's like, bring it on. You know, he's the kind that gets into fights, you know, thinks he's an alpha. And sure enough, as the movie starts to progress, he's moved in. He starts, you know, walking around, and he's got these neighbors. You know, ever since that deal with the party, you know, he's had their ire, and they're beating on the floor, you know, telling him to shut up, and he's barely walking around making any noise at all. And it's really kind of, I don't know, distracting to him. And another odd thing about the building is that the bathroom, there's like the apartments here, right? Or the apartments here in view, right? And then it's like a horseshoe shape. It goes like this, and then the bathroom is all the way over here on the other side of the courtyard. So, you know, if you need to go to the bathroom, you got to leave your apartment and then go all the way around and go to the bathroom. And Tchaikovsky, his apartment window has a perfect view into the bathroom, right?
Right.
And that was one of the negotiating points. You know, it's like, well, what if I get sick in the middle of the night? You know, and I need to go. You know, it's like it's going to be an inconvenience for me. So that, you know, Mr. Z, you know, lowered the price a little bit for him and let him have it. He starts noticing that people are standing in the bathroom just like little statues for hours at a time. You know, and he thinks it's a little weird. But it doesn't get weird until he's moving a dresser one day, and he sees there's a hole in the wall, and it looks like it's got cotton or something stuffed in it. So he pulls the stuffing out, and he notices, well, there's something in it, and he pulls it out, and it's a tooth, a human tooth, and a front tooth, and the sides. So he's like, okay. And that's the point. I remember the first time I saw the movie, that's when I went, what the? One of the things that Polanski likes to do is he really likes to let things breathe and develop in his movies. So a lot of times they'll seem slow paced, and really what they're doing is that it's building slowly. You can lure the viewer in and kind of mess with their head, because before they realize it, they're in the middle of something. They're like, holy moly, what is going on here? And that's what happened with this movie. That's one thing I love about movies like that. You know, people say, "Well, it's slow, man. I can't. You know, I've got to." You know, we're too ADHD when it comes to that kind of stuff, man. Sometimes the film has to breathe, but by the time that you get the tooth in the wall, it's like, holy wow, what is going on here? And then it gets weird. That's what's so wonderful about this movie, is that you've got all this weirdness that's going on. There's and occasionally, Stella comes in and out of the picture. And she's really upset. She finds out that Simone is dead, and he runs into her at this restaurant where she's like partying with some of her, like, they look like kind of artsy friends. And he goes back and he gets really drunk, and she's like, wanting to go home with him and stuff. So he don't want to take her to his place, because then she'll figure it out, that he's living in, Simone Schul's old apartment. So he goes, let's go to your place, and they get there, and he is shit faced. I mean, he is drunk, and he passes out on her. So she's like, oh well, whatever. And at this point, he sees a couple more of his neighbors in the bathroom, and this lady comes to his door, and she's crying, and she's got this little daughter that's got a brace on her right leg, and she says they're trying to make me homeless, and they say I make too much noise, and honestly I don't. My little girl, they're just trying to get back at me for something I don't know what they did. Have you ever had a really, really, really bad day? I don't know if this is just one of my own weirdnesses, but have you ever wondered if this life is really just hell for a previous life that we lived in? That's kind of the feeling that I get out of this movie at some point. It's crazy and weird and alienating, and there's certain different times where we don't know if it's his perception or in his madness, or if it's reality, but things start happening. People are not exactly people. It's like it gets go, whoa, dude, what? And then at some point in the movie, when you question yourself, it's like, am I being driven mad too? Because the movie gets so weird, in that sense that, like I was talking about, that slow developmental, that thing that kind of pulls you in. There's a scene where he's out in a park, and he just slaps a kid, and I don't know, man. I remember the first time I saw it, and it kind of happened again the other night. I mean, last night when I watched it, that scene just kind of was just like, it was weird, man. It was just because this stuff that's going on with Tarkovsky, he's getting to a point where he's having really bad reactions to it. And I'm going to leave it at that, because, if you do see this movie, I think you'll be glad. And I strongly recommend that you see all three of the movies if you can, because that's just a treat to have that whole complete picture. Especially Repulsion's a beautiful little film in its madness, because Catherine Deneuve is just fantastic, and she has a way of, I don't know, it's almost like her, she's a ghost, but she's not. She's just a person that's mentally ill. You think, you hope. In this movie, the music is used in a really, really unique way. because he uses it to emphasize the strangest moments. And when he does, it's, you make a glass sing, a crystal, it has to be crystal ware. That beautiful little high-pitched humming sound, and people can play those things and stuff. Well, it's like I guess the music is that, and he uses it in a really really nifty way. And every time that I'm going to talk about horror films, at some point, if I don't talk about the audio, you need to remind me of that, because there's always, in a good horror film, there's always something about the music and the sound mix that the director, punched, home what he wants to get across. I think Polanski really succeeds in doing that in this film. I don't know at what point in this video, but I'm going to show you a little cut and just give you a taste of what Repulsion's like. And I'd love to talk about that, because I had to, while I was cutting that, I ended up watching the thing. It's a great movie. Today's history lesson is pretty much over. The history of horror. So in this one, I'm covering the 70s. But the idea that I had was everything before 1960, I'm going to kind of classify, because there's only a few really exquisite stones in that era. But it's, the 60s is when horror began taking an artistic direction, and with the help of people like Alfred Hitchcock and Polanski, William Castle, Mario Bava, Roger Corman, people like that. H.G. Lewis in his own way, the father of gore. That all started in the 60s. I was thinking along the lines of doing 60s and 70s, 80s and 90s, and the aughts and the teens, right?
Right.
And that way I can do, maybe get it to a point where I'm doing 3 shows a week, just focusing on the history, and then occasionally focus on something new, because that's ultimately what I want to do is highlight current and new stuff that you can find on Netflix. Or you're bored, you don't want to spend money, man. I don't know about you, I spend enough money, so I have to look for stuff, on the internet. I do subscribe to a thing called Shudder, which is, when nothing else fails, man, I can always go on Shudder and find something. They've got a lot of horror going on right now. It's Asian thematic horror films from the aughts and the teens. Current stuff that's about 10 years old, maybe going into the 90s too. Really, the big J horror started in the 90s. What do you think? What kind of horror film do you like? Let me know in the comments, because I can see, like, I can literally see doing this forever, because there's always stuff to find, from history. So let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about this show. This episode specifically. Let me know what you want to look at. Is there any movies that busted you upside the head, and I might not be aware of it. I learned about some Australian movie from Emma Spooky Astronauts. Hello, Emma. I like your stuff. Just a little shout out. I guess I'm going to wrap it up here with the good old Daterludes. I'm out, and I'll be back.
Right.